Do the record thing. So now whatever we say is us. So welcome everybody. It's another session of We the People for the People, and that means all people. And what we're really talking about today is getting involved, getting engaged, and when it comes to the home and community-based waivers and the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. And what we really want to focus on is the fact that it's the stories and the engagement of families that have made all the differences in the world. Before I get into that, I'd like to have Stephanie say hello for a few minutes and kind of go over some of the other things that need to be covered, and we'll come back and I'll use that story to introduce our guest today.
Hello for a few minutes. I am Stephanie, and I would like to say that what we are doing is actually working. I've heard from several parents that have said that they've met with their legislators, they handed over their form, and that they already knew other families that had done so. There's been a ton of delegation meetings going on because this is the season of that. And those are like kind of super money meetings where you get to meet your local area representatives and your senator. And if you are comfortable doing so, you can speak to them in that setting. I have a link listed in the chat of kind of all of the things we've been up to. Just if anybody's new, we're 7 weeks old. We are a baby project here. This is a grassroots, family-driven, family-run organization. We don't have staff. This is just us. So one of the ways that we came up with is a form where you could go on that top link. It says My Story form, and it has very basic information. Your name, a few favorite things about yourself you'd like to have as an icebreaker. My kids really like VeggieTales. That's what I put on there. And then what you'd like to say to your legislator. What is your story? What's the message you're trying to portray? And that kind of helps us organize when we go have those appointments to a little bit more concise. And it's also a way for connection, because really this group is all about making that personal connection. Once we're personally connected to anything in life, we invest our time, and our hope is that they invest their skill sets in creating laws and appropriations. So the story form link is at the top. And then the second link is we do have a Facebook group page. I would highly encourage you to come hop on our page, introduce yourself, share your story with us, get to know who the family across Florida is and what we're walking through. And there's already been a ton of meets that have happened out of our group, people that have gotten together outside of the intersphere. And that is a beautiful thing, because not only do we want to connect with our legislators, we need to connect with each other. There's a whole lot of hacks and tips that I don't know that maybe other families have gone through. So there's the Facebook page. And then we have a YouTube page. A YouTube page is where we put this meeting out on, so families who aren't able to participate can come check out video our meetings. And then I've also come up just last night, because my kids didn't sleep, all of the stories that people have submitted I have put on the YouTube page to kind of like dorky music. I'm going to work on that. But just to music, so that we can just keep getting the message out there. If you go hand your your story to your legislator, and then Melissa Mazeda is going to a lot of these delegation meetings, and she's printing out our stories and she's handing our stories to them. And then if they're on the YouTube, and then the story just keeps getting out there and helps connect us to the people that can help. So there's the YouTube page. And if you're not a Facebooker, there is a link on the ARC of Florida's website to all the delegation meetings, listed, by county and date. I got my list on Facebook from their site, and we do have the delegation meetings as events on Facebook. I would really like, even if you're not a Facebooker, find your delegation meeting. If you're not we want you to go, but if you're not planning on going, at least click interested so then you can connect to the people in your county. Because a lot of this will be much more effective if we are in our local communities getting to know each other and helping each other with our stories and maybe going to appointments with our legislators together. And that's what I've been up to. It has been the most rewarding thing in the world to read everybody's stories and be able to put it together and make it personal for everyone to bring to your legislators. And that's the whole point of it. We want to give you as many tools as possible. And that's my spiel. Is that good?
That's great. And because one of the things that you didn't say was the amazing work that you're doing to take those informational, the flyer, and create the flyer from the information with the photo and create graphically very pleasing, very patriotic, very well messaged, nonpartisan, but very, very American. With we the people citizenship type thing, and permanent residents and people that belong, that are here and are welcome, and that what we want to do is be sure that there's a voice. And so, it's easy to complain, and there's lots of complaints to complain about, and I wouldn't dismiss that for a second. But a problem without a solution is just complaining. So what we want to try to do is bring the stories that are human, that show the impacts of, has it worked? Has it made it different? Has it changed the course of your family? Some of the folks have been on, like my daughter, since inception. And so, we've seen a history of how it profoundly impacted our family and the trajectory of our family's life, and how much it impacted us during COVID in ways, and how consumer directed care has had profound impacts in being able to surround our daughter with people that cared about her, that loved her, that wanted to be with her, and that gave them an opportunity to care and do a job in a nice home, in a nice environment with a good person that they loved. And we've had people that have stayed with Shelby for a decade or more. And those stories need to be told as well as the challenges. Because if we only hear problems, if we only hear complaints, then the answer will be, well, obviously this program doesn't work, we need to get rid of it. And our answer is no. The issue is the fact that it's not adequately funded has put the Agency for Persons with Disabilities in a tough spot between medical necessity and limitations on the budget. So you've heard the story again, and I'm going to tell it again. We have to kind of imagine our legislators as a family member. They're in my family, and they're in my family, and I'm in their family. And our family is our legislative district. And if you think about it, you probably all have folks in your family that really don't know what you do every day, how much it takes, what the work is, what the effort is, how hard it can be, how devastatingly challenging it can be, how economically hard it can be, and how important what we are doing is, and how important it is the providers that are helping in the community are. And so it's really important that we're able to convey that story with solutions. And so one of the biggest challenges we've seen is that this waiver is old enough that it's got a history now. And part of the challenge for those that came in inception was it was well funded. People, the approach to identifying the needs was very proactive, very collaborative, very engaging. The development of the support plan was a meaningful story of engagement, and the identification of service was based upon that person being able to remain in their home and live in their community. We've been challenged lately in this program for those philosophies to be realistic more often than not because of the constraints of money. The tug of war between those that are served and those that are waiting. And that family member that I was talking about, that you need to be able to educate So they understand, because that family member that you're needing to educate is the same family member that's responsible for the budget to fund a program. So don't you think it's important that if you got a family member like that, that you educate, that you inspire them, that you enlighten them, but you also hand them things that are important in the solution world. So one of the areas we're really focusing on is the Revenue Estimating Conference that deals specifically with social services. Where does the money come from? How is it identified? How do we deal with the budget? The rest of Medicaid programs operate under this, where they're able to project forward and do planning. APD has to wait till the budget comes out everywhere to see how much money they have. Yet they're also constrained by a lot of legal requirements to meet the medically necessary health and safety of their clients. So one of the things that is important to do is to be able to have those conversations, have that engagement, so that if they don't hear these things, the alternative that's looming on the horizon and beginning to crack in the door is managed care. Now, I can personally say that I know numerous people that I have assisted in transitioning from the statewide Medicaid managed care program on the long-term care portion of that they may have been identified for 40 hours a week or 80 hours a week. And in almost every case, they only got half of that consistently. And it really puts you a tremendous amount of strain. So it's important that we say, before you jump to Medicaid managed care for agency or persons with disabilities, how about you take a real hard look at the statewide Medicaid managed care program and see how the utilization has been. What is the difference between the authorized services and the actual delivered services? Because the challenge is that it happened as much as it's needed and as much as it's authorized. So that's an area that, we get into the woods a little bit about, but that's the kind of thing that is right now. APD doesn't work. We need to go to managed care. We need to change this whole thing up. And we need to go, no, the program has a history that is deep and powerfully impactful, meaningful, in part in order to settlement a federal lawsuit that Florida had, and for being in federal contempt of court for failing to meet the needs of developmental disabilities. So there's a long history to this that we don't forget. And the courts may still serve and have a very important role in protecting freedom. The dignity to be able to have the choice of being able to live in your home and in your community instead of having to be forced into an institutional care. And that's what the Med Waiver is. It's an alternative to the entitled Medicaid institutional level of care. So what is important today is that, how did we get here? What is this all about? And I am so thrilled that a dear friend of mine, Berthy Aponte, has graciously offered to help tell us a little of the story of how she got involved, what she did, and how she helped when it was at a critical time to help educate leadership in Florida and then in the country. And instead of taking any more of your thunders, Berthy, if you could unmute yourself.
Thank you, Tom. It's so wonderful to be able to get connected with you again. I so much remember you and Shelby and those wonderful seminars that you guys did together when she was about 8 years old, and how much we learned from both of you, and how much I admire you as one of the few daddies doing this. So thank you. And thank you for staying there and keeping it up throughout the years.
Well, it's been folks like Stephanie that have really inspired me, and also inspired me to not give up, to not do. So let's talk a little bit about how in the world did you get here today? Tell us a little bit about your story.
Or let me tell you that I am really, really happy to see young parents involved. So Stephanie, thank you so much. Because I can see you're an energetic parent, so thank you for your leadership. And because in the disability world, we use this word, nothing about me without me. There is a phrase. I can't start talking about anything without talking about my daughter, Lucy. And I'm here in memory of her. I lost her almost 3 years ago. She was my greatest teacher. And how did I get here? I got here even before she was born, because I was working at a community college in Cleveland, Ohio. And it happened that it was with people with disabilities. I had no idea. And I got pregnant when I was there. And then Lucy came, and the rest is story. But when Tom told me that if I could talk to the younger parents and to the other parents, it's my pleasure. But today I sat down and I started thinking about what things could I share with you guys. And I know that I will not be able to share, a whole life story in a short time, but I just want to mention a few things and then talk about two things. One thing that I like to talk with you about is my mission statement, that it really helped me, and I'll tell you about that. The other one is the principles of self-determination. That was really important for me. I think that we need to talk about how this all started, and we need to learn a little bit about Julie and Katie Beckett. They were my friends. Katie and I served in a congressional bipartisan committee that I had the honor of chairing in DC. That's another story. I like to share how we met with Jeb and the contract that Jeb and my daughter Lucy signed. I also had the privilege of meeting Ted Deutsch, and he was very helpful too. I think you guys all need to make sure that you understand where it came from, that you understand what the waiver is, the home and community-based service waiver, where did it came from? Not only because of Katie, but in the law, the 1915C, a little bit of the Social Security Act. I think maybe some of you have your kids in school, so it's important that you understand IDEA, what it means. The ADA, when it started, it was in 1990. It's been quite a few years. The Rehab Act, that's still very important. So I think that, so I'm going to go back. Those are some things that I think maybe some of you already know. I can talk about some of those later on, but I now want to talk to you about my mission statement. And it's 4 words: love, learn, share, and serve. If you ever get an email from me, you're going to get that in my email. And underneath, you're also going to get nothing about me. Not being able to speak is not the same as not having anything to do, to learn, to dream. That's in all of my emails. But when I talk about love, you have to love people and attack issues. You're going to be in situations that is going to be difficult. But the people that are on the other side of you, don't attack them. Don't get upset with them. Love them because they're doing their job. But you do have to focus on the issue. And I remember my husband and I sitting in the IEP meetings and really being upset about what's going on. But we never, we always love the people. To this time, some of them are very good friends of mine. So make sure that you do that you don't get angry at the people, that you get angry at the issue and that you focus on the issue. The other point is the learn. You must learn all of those things that I mentioned to you. What is the waiver, where did it came from, the ADA, the Rehab Act, all of those things you have to learn, because when you're meeting with those legislators, you can teach them and they will be able to understand it. So you have to learn, and then you have to share what you learn. See, love, learn, share. You can't keep it to yourself. If you learn and you keep it to yourself, it doesn't do any good. It's very selfish, but you have to share it. And for me, it's when I learn something, I always like to share it. And I think that in Spanish, we have this thing is Juntos Podemos, which is together we can. So if we all learn, but then we have to serve. And the serve portion, it helped me because when I was serving, it didn't get so emotional, because if I was only thinking about Lucy, I will get angry. I would like to cry, whatever. But if I was thinking about the Lucys of the world, the other people, it allowed me to be less emotional and I think more effective too. So that has helped me throughout my life and throughout my advocacy. Love, learn, share, and serve. Now, the other thing that for me, it was very important is the principles of self-determination. And I'm sure some of you probably, know about it. I was very blessed that I was able to meet some of the people that were like Tom Nerney, that were like the ones that started with this movement, work with many self-advocates in DC that were very strong about the principle of self-determination. So I learned from them a lot. But what are the principles? Maybe some of you know it. Freedom, right? Because we say that people with disabilities are still in search of freedom. A lot of the things that, that other citizens have, people with disabilities don't have, and we're still fighting for freedom. So freedom to decide where we live, where we work, what we do, even what we eat. My daughter has significant disabilities. So for her to tell us, I don't want to eat anymore, that was part of her freedom, allowing her to be free. The other thing is authority. For the individual, remember, nothing about me without me. So authority to know what services I need, what services I want, what supports I have, what activities I want to go to. And do I need assistance or not need assistance? A lot of our kids need our help in order to help them to attain their freedom and to have their authority. We have to have supports because none of us are totally independent. We're all interdependent. Some need more than others support. I don't do my grass. I guess I could do it, but I don't do my grass. So I'm depending on the lawn people to do the grass. I don't do my taxes. So we are all interdependent. People with disabilities need more formal supports because there are the formal supports that are the paid supports, and there are the natural supports that is us. Even though some people in the CDC Plus, can be formal and informal if they get paid for services. Another really important aspect of the principles of self-determination is responsibility, because we can't be asking for freedom and supports and authority and not be responsible. We have to assume responsibility. And whatever it is that we can do, we have to, be good, make sure that if we get funding, make sure that we're using those funding appropriately. That because there's other people that also are going to need services. So we need to be responsible. If our kids are able to work or do something, they should be working and doing something. And then the last principle is the principle of confirmation, to be part of the system, to revitalize the family. Because in being part of the system, I talked to Tom about this. There is already a structure that is not working, I guess. I don't know. Maybe some of you, can get involved or are involved. The Family Care Council. In my times, the Family Care Council worked. And I participated since it started, I believe in the early 90s or something that it started. And the people that are there are gubernatorial appointees. And by the way, Milton signed the amendment to the law so that it could be gubernatorial appointments. And you can do a lot of stuff with that. So I wanted to share that. I don't know if you want me to talk about other stuff or if you have questions or whatever, but at least those two things I wanted to talk to you about.
Well, I'll tell you what, Berthy, you are such a dynamo. You haven't slowed down a bit. The passion that you have, the intelligence that you share, the experiences, really based upon the whole idea of family and about engagement. So, you mentioned Katie Beckett and her mom. Can you talk a little bit about what they did that inspired you?
Yeah, and if I have time, I like to talk about that. And if I have time, I like to talk about our first meeting with Jeb. But
you got time for both of them because this is showtime, baby. Thank you for being here.
So, the waiver, Julie was a very active mom, just like many of you in this group. And Katie was ill and was in the hospital. And they exhausted their health insurance coverage. But then Medicaid kicked in. But Medicaid would pay for Katie's services in the hospital, but not home. And this I heard from Julie, because Julie and I, we share. And then Katie then sat in that congressional committee with me. Unfortunately, they both have passed since. But Julie told me that because she was so vocal about the issue that she wanted to bring Katie back, and that was in the early 80s, and she couldn't bring her home. She mentioned it to somebody, and somebody mentioned it to Reagan, then President Reagan. And what she told me is that he had a press conference and he mentioned the situation without saying names or anything. But because she was so vocal, people knew. And she said in the morning she got up and there were like a bunch of the press was in her garden, in her lawn. And Reagan gave the first waiver for Katie to go home with the supports and services. And that's how the waiver started. And in many states, they still call it the Katie Beckett waiver. My daughter was born in 1981 in Ohio. And in Ohio, right after the Katie Beckett waiver, when they waived Katie to go home and get the in-home services, the Ohio started with they call it the Model 50 program. They got 50 people that were getting in-home supports as opposed to going to the institutions. And then Lucy, we were blessed that Lucy was in the second 50. So in the early 80s, Lucy was one of the first people in this nation, or person, that was in the waiver in Ohio, okay? Maybe she was maybe 4 years old or 5 years old when we started getting those services. But then we moved to Florida and we lost everything. But I started getting involved, and that's like another story. But that's, in a nutshell, that's how, that's what happened with Julie and Katie.
So one of that involvement things, Kate, you briefly said, well, I saw I got a little involved. So tell me about Jeb Bush before he was governor, and how you all came to know each other, and what happened with the contract.
Okay. So for whatever reason, I was an independent, by the way. I was not a Democrat. I was not a Republican. I was an independent. And for whatever reason, I had heard that Jeb had run for governor and was running for governor. And I would tell my husband, I wonder what's his position on things with disabilities. I don't know why I was curious. I was never curious about that with anybody else. Anyways, but by that time, I was a support coordinator.
But didn't you mention that because he was a Bush and his dad did an ADA and that the Bush family, right?
Yeah. Well, no, what happened was that I was a support coordinator, and this dad had a group home, and I was providing services to his daughter, and they invited Jeb to go to the group home. So he calls me up and he says, Berthy, Jeb Bush is coming to tour the group home, and he was running for governor. He was still not the governor. And the families are going to be here. And I said, well, Lucy doesn't live there. He says, no, it doesn't matter. Just come. So I told my husband, let's go, and meet Jeb Bush and see what's his position on issues with disability. So we went there, and I'm thinking he must be arrogant because, his father a president, his brother a governor, he's a Bush, all of that. He must be very arrogant. So I just stayed in a corner and watched him come in, whatever, they gave him the tour. And then we were to sit in this dining room table. And so Jeb sat in the head table, and I sat next to him, and my husband sat kind of like across from me. And I just asked him the first question. So what's your positions on issues with disability?
Well, at least you started with a softball.
No, and I'm thinking he's going to tell me all of these things. I said, I'm sure he, and you know what his response was? Do you remember, Tom?
Go ahead.
I want to learn. Talk to me. And I'm like, what? So that's what his response. And then we started talking, and then he said, I don't think he's gonna like that I'm gonna say this, but I'm gonna say it anyways. Then remember, I was thinking he was arrogant, right? So then he looks at me and he says, I'll give you half a day. Would you take me around? He tells me that, okay? And then I said to myself, I didn't tell him, but I said, oh my God, what about my half a day? He's telling me that that he's giving me half a day. So I respond to him. I said, I'll give you half a day. I told him because he asked that he was giving me half a day. So my response to him is, I'll give you half a day. So then he says, and then I said, and I'll bill you if you win. And that was it. And I said, I'm never going to see this guy anymore. This is lip service, whatever. We leave and everybody goes home and whatever. So, we came home, and then a few days later, he calls me up and he says, can we meet? And I said, of course we can meet. So then remember, I was a support coordinator. So I gather a few families in my house, and I told everybody, you have 3 minutes to speak. And then I invited one of the attorneys from the Disability Rights Florida. And I said, you need to come. She says, you're going to make me drive 45 minutes. And I said, yes. You need to come, and you need to talk about the lawsuits that are pending against the state. Marcia Beach was the director, and she was a very strong mom. And she had filed a bunch of lawsuits against then Governor Childs. But then Jeb was going to inherit them. They were not Jeb's lawsuits. They were the prior administration lawsuits for lack of funding. So she came over, and I told each parent, you're going to talk about dental, because I knew what their issues were. So I said, you're going to talk about, each one of your issues. And everybody talked about it. And I had prepared a document that had Lucy's picture, and it said something like that I will represent your issues and those of people with disabilities. And I read it to him, and I said, well, Lucy has this document for you. Are you willing to sign this contract? And he said, yes. So he signed the contract, and we helped Lucy hand over hand to sign the contract. And that's how it started. And thanks to him, we have APD, because he used to get very frustrated because Developmental Disabilities was under now DCF. I think it had another name. I forgot what the name was, but it was the secretary.
HRS.
The what?
HRS.
HRS, yeah. So it was the secretary, it was the assistant secretary, it was the Developmental Disabilities Program Office, DDPO. And every time he wanted to do something, he had to go all of those steps, and he got frustrated. And Shelley Brantley he appointed Shelley Brantley, the director of APD when it started. And, and I think it was a good thing, and I'm glad that it still exists, because I think many people have benefited. And the other thing is that it elevated at the legislature, because now all of the legislators know about developmental disabilities. Before, it was not part of the vocabulary because it was way under.
And part of the challenge that we're working through right now is that lack of knowledge, or maybe a lack of the understanding of the good, and all they've heard is the problems. And it's so important that there's an understanding of, we might have gotten lost along the way, but the idea, the heart and the soul of this is deeply based not only in just a great idea, but a lot of legislation, a lot of hard work, and a lot of things like that. So Berthy, now that you have given us a bit of a brief history, um, can you talk more specifically about how did the waiver impact your family with Lucy? Lucy had significant disabilities, was deeply loved, had a creative streak that was amazing, an artistic flair that was magical. And there was a tremendous effort on your part and of others to find a way for her to be able to express herself. Now, one of the things that I know that you did through the years is take people like me, and because you got connected someplace, and you called up and said, Tom, there's this accessible electronic information technology task force that Governor Bush is starting, and I think that you'd be really good to talk about assistive technology. Would you be on that board? And I did.
I don't even remember.
Yeah, and you did that. And so because you didn't even remember, because it wasn't done as an IOU, it was really done out of that I think this is somebody that contributes. And that's part of your mission statement that you have lived all these years. And I think if you think about it, that flyer with the picture that you made for those meetings in the very earliest days with Jeb is really what we're talking about here. It's the same idea that it wasn't a program and a campaign, it was Lucy. And Lucy and the Lucys of the time became inspiring and became with a purpose. And so what we've lost is an awful lot of the legislative history in our legislative bodies now because nobody's there that was there. So it's important and invaluable to us to hear kind of how we got here, to know that it had a huge impact, and to not give up because it's rough times right now, but to know that we need to work hard to get it right, because it's so important.
But Tom, again, you know, when I mentioned my mission statement about the share,
Yes.
so we tell our stories, but we have to be knowledgeable when we
Yes.
go to legislators, not only about our kids, because we are knowledgeable about our kids, but we have to be knowledgeable beyond, because they want to know. I mean, and this is, and the good thing about our group, you know, when we were working together, is that this was a nonpartisan issue. It doesn't matter what we were, you know, and again, you have to stay focused to the issue. It's the issue. It's not, am I Democrat, am I Republican? When I met Jeb, I was an independent, and I told him, look, we're not Republicans. And he told me, it doesn't matter. This is not about politics. And when he said that he wanted it to go out and, you know, learn, and I took him to group homes, and I took him to institutions, and I took them to schools, whatever, I told him, I'll go out with you, but I don't want you to tell anybody. Nobody's to know. And I did not allow him to use our issue as a campaign issue. So for him, it was literally an interest. He never campaigned on our issues. And the day of the elections, he went to Lucy School, and the media came, and they told me, we know that you don't want the media. And then he did say that he was there, you know, visiting a daughter's friend, whatever, but he didn't say anything. So, you know, because I think that if we start thinking about ourselves and, you know, we want glory or something like that, it gets out of hand. When I met Ted Deutsch, some other day, I'll tell you about that. He was a Democrat he was a new state senator here in Florida. And by that time, I was a Republican. And I told Ted, I'm a Republican. And he's a Democrat, a member of the Senate here. And he says, Berthy, this is not about politics. And we became good friends. And when he retired from Congress, like last year, he mentioned, you know, the relationship with Lucy and I. But, you know, I think it's really important that we just focus on the issue. And I forgot what you asked me, Tom.
Well, I think that was a good answer to the question I forgot I asked you. What it really comes down to is these kinds of messages are just so important to hear, that if we want to be impactful, you can't just attack people. If you want to be impactful, you want to be engaging and informative. If you want to be impactful, you need to know what you're talking about. And if you don't, then don't. Because misinformation is bad or worse sometimes than no information. So that's why trying to have some legislative language behind the scenes and things that are going on, and looking at things like the Social Services Estimating Conference really is a kind of
Can you
high
hear me?
level solution to what we're talking about. And we really need to continue to make it personal, but not make it aggressive. And that, you know, your mission about love is
You have
that's what we're trying to inspire.
that will help you. I promise you. Love the people and attack the issues. And if somebody doesn't agree with you, then move to the next one. Somebody's going to listen to you. And you have to pick the messenger. Sometimes, you know, some people work better with, you know, with one person than another. So don't think that you have to take the glory. Just give it to whoever, you know, whoever you see that is getting along with this legislator, let that person take the lead. One thing that we did when we were involved with the Family Care Council, we used to have our meetings at the legislature's office. We will say, can we have the meeting? And they will be, sometimes the legislators will be there, sometimes the aides will be there. And we had this thing that our kids were adopting the legislators. Like what we did with Jeb, they were adopting the legislators. And that way they, you know, they could follow up a little bit more. I don't know, a lot of the stuff people stopped doing. You know, I think people, I don't know, got comfortable or didn't understand. We really had to fight hard because there was nothing. Right, Tom?
Well, you know, we're going to continue to do that. And the way the fight happens is what we're talking about here through informed engagement, being part of the solution, being an ally. The we the people, for the people, by the people means just that. We are the people that are part of this country that needs to help with the solutions. And by the people means you have to be there. You have to be at the table. You have to provide engagement and information and be aware and be able to listen. If you are only sitting at that table thinking about the next thing you want to say without listening to anything they've said, you've missed the opportunity to have an engaged dialogue instead of just delivering an ad, you know, and for the people, the Logans, the Gavins, the Lucys, the Shelbys of this state need us to say the truth. And one of the things that we know is the truth will set us free. And we need to be telling the truth and having the answers. So, Berthy, I know we've taken a lot of your time. Is there anything else you'd like to share? And what I keep hearing you say is, you know, I'll talk about that again. So I hope that means that you're willing to keep engaged with us and help us with this.
I will be happy to do that. But again, I cannot reemphasize that you have to tell your story. If you don't tell your story, people are not going to know. You have to tell your story, but you have to tell it in a loving way. And you have to learn. You have to learn, share, and serve. That's basically, and please learn the principles of self-determination and apply them. Very, very important.
Well, what we're going to
I
do
think
is
we have Hannah who
I have a
is
quick
jumping
question.
at the bit. Yeah, I can see you over there.
I'm sorry because I'm driving and I
Yeah.
can't put the message in the chat. But you brought up the Family Care Council, and I am a new co-chair of the Family Care Council in Northeast Florida, and I'm finding the role challenging for many reasons. I am well versed in reading legislation, and from the perspective of reading through the legislation, I have a good understanding of what the intention was. However, how that's actually following through and what's being told when we try to act in that role are two very different things. And it's almost as if anytime we're getting somewhere or we're trying to do something positive, another block is thrown in our way. So I'm very curious as to how this looked before and how I can work to help bring that back, because I've got to say the majority of the people that I'm working with they don't want to be part of it anymore because it is so difficult and it shouldn't be. This is something that should be helpful, and I don't want to just give up. So how do I change this?
Please don't give up, okay? Because it is it is a tool that is there by law. You know, maybe if you guys can get to have some of the legislators understand it and maybe help you, because if the legislators talks with APD, that has a lot of power, okay? So coming from the legislator's office, that has a lot of power. I was a member of the Family Care Council almost when it started. And my husband at one point became the chair of our local Family Care Council. We even got a grant. I think it was like a $200,000 grant, and we developed a bunch of trainings. Every Family Care Council should have those manuals.
So we don't. we don't get any training.
I think that would be a really good thing for.
Are there, and you know who used to do the trainings? We, the parents, with the kids. We would train the personal care assistants, the other families, the parents, and those manuals, they cost a lot of money. They're there. APD has them. Every Family Care Council got a copy. So I, try to. Our local office a couple of years ago, when I asked, they found them. They found they found the manuals, but they're shelved.
Well,
Okay,
and I think,
so
that's an excellent point that you're making, is that, I need help to know what's been lost to try to bring it back. And,
right.
It's wonderful for Berthy to be able to share, well, this is what the intent, the purpose, and the law, and how it got to be, because we're not just asking for a favor, we're asking for appropriate implementation.
Yes, and
right, and I think the other thing is we're being told that we can't participate, we can't talk to legislators in representation of Family Care Council. I mean, we're being explicitly told, so it's really frustrating.
Thank you.
That's part of the reason why this. That's part of the reason why this group founded, is that there is absolutely no.
I think this is a really good thing for us to start this version of our story, with our legislators. Anna, I would love to talk to you more. This is something I've experienced down here. So maybe that's another conversation we can have to just try to get it back to its roots.
I'd love to, and I appreciate it. And yes, send me all of the history. I want to know everything.
Berthy, this is Melody Hearn, Area 15. Diane Ziccarelli was one of those original Family Care Council members. I remember you because I came to one of the governor's summits on children and youth when it was in St. Lucie County at the IRSC building there, the student building. And I had just been coming through a hard time. And as a governor appointee, I said, I'm Family Care Council Area 15. APD's staring at me. And I take off my hat visually, like take it off. I said, now I'm a mama, and this mama bear is going to tell you what we've had to come through. And how dare you? Because most parents are in so much trauma caring for their individual that they can't think of what to say or have this opportunity like I have right now to speak before you. So let me represent the families of the state. And we had to fight ACA to get nursing in our home when we had a child that literally was required to have it, but yet was denied and denied and denied. So I won't take up any more of your time, but what she was saying is true. And it was basically, I felt like I was slapped on the hand when I said, I would like a legislative platform. Oh, we can't do that anymore. I go, well, I'm going to have points and I'm going to speak to my legislators. And I just got done attending 3 of our local legislative delegation hearings, telling them what we need. And I had other parents speaking on the behalf of a person who is on the Medicaid waiver. And we were making our points. Educationally, we have issues in education now. And we want to see equal opportunity to our individuals to have that freedom that you were talking about. They should have every opportunity, but they're running over their rights. So this is where we got to stand up.
Okay, anybody, if nobody has a connection with the governor's office, you have to pick a messenger and somebody has to go there and try to develop a relationship with the governor's office. family
He's
care.
not appointed 4.5 years. He's not appointing anybody.
But you
Yeah.
guys have to go there, tell your story, and get somebody within the office that will listen to you and start doing that, because it is a gubernatorial appointment. And I am glad to say that my husband was the one that wrote the amendment so that it could have been, so that it was a gubernatorial appointment, because before it was a DCF that this and this that appointed them. So I the challenge that I leave you guys. Yeah,
you.
go try. Somebody's got to go tell the story, and somebody's going to be the good messenger to get it through so that the governor understands. I'm pretty sure the governor doesn't even know about the Family Care Council or what it means.
He does, but I do think you're absolutely right. It
Get
needs
somebody
that
within his
personal
office.
connection. Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Excuse me, can I say
Accepted.
something?
One before we have to get going, there is one mom here. Amanda, are you still on?
Yes, ma'am.
She just finished her very first delegation meeting, and I asked her to come share her experience. I think so excited that you went. Tell us how it went.
Okay, so I guess pro tip, if you start crying at the beginning, they'll shut off the clock and tell you to take your time.
The girl.
All right.
Before I even started talking, like I'm that mom, and the tears started and I'm blubbering, and God bless Representative Bobby Payne, because he said, Amanda, look at me. We've talked about this before. Just look at me and tell your story. And so I finally got myself together and basically told them, our story, with Jaden and trying to get through the crisis process, and how our appeal hearing has been rescheduled 3 times. It's now been scheduled again for December 4th. I reached out to them in March and got the denial in June, and filed my appeal. I think it was like a week and a half later, and here we are. And so I was the only one that they had follow-up questions for, and because Senator Hudson asked me, why we were denied. He's like, I don't know if this is too personal. You don't have to share. I'm like, oh, I'll share. I'll talk to anybody who will listen, whether they want to or not. And so I told him, I said, basically, among the other asinine reasons that they gave, one of the big ones was there were no police reports, Baker Act commitments, or DCF involvement. I said, so basically I am being penalized for trying to be a good mom. And like, you could see in their face, like they were like, holy crap, that's terrible. But I did present my asks. I asked that APD be involved in the I had my notes in the
Social Services Estimating Conference.
that. Thank you, Tom. Also for them to fully fund the Medicaid waiver. I said the last time that happened was when Jeb Bush was in office. I said, and that's ridiculous. I said, I know it can be done. I've seen your budgets. And then my last ask, also, of course, was the managed care, to please say no to that. I said, we don't need that. We need to fix the system we already have. And yeah, that was it. And I survived.
Feel now? How do you feel afterwards? I know you were nervous before. How do you feel?
It was a, can I say bad words?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a shit show. I felt like at the beginning, like I was so calm, waiting and doing fine. And then I got up there and then boom, it hit me. But I'm telling the story of my kid, and my kid is important. So I get a little emotional, but anyway, I survived
How do you feel right now.
I feel so much better. Like I gave major thanks to Bobby Payne's aide, who has for the past 2 months been trying to help. God bless her soul. She's referred me to several agencies across the state, and I mentioned this as well, that I've talked to everyone I can think of, and the first thing they always say is, "Have you reached out to APD?" Yeah. Yeah, I have. So, but I
Well-
did, I laminate that, the flyer thing that you made, Stephanie, for Jaden. I laminated that and I gave one to Bobby and one to Senator Hudson. So,
Another Lucy has been born.
Yeah.
And Amanda, thank you so
That's
much.
wonderful. That's
for-
wonderful, Amanda. And remember, think about others when you're fighting for your kids, and it will help you.
100%.
If I was only thinking about Lucy, it was harder than if I thought of everybody else.
Right. Well, I mentioned that as well because I actually reached out to the school that Jaden goes to. He's in an ESE school, basically. And then of course they have ESE classes throughout the district, but just at his school alone, there are 180 children on an IEP. And I mentioned that, I said, you know, Jaden's one kid, but just in our county, we have 180 children that are going to need help. They're going to grow up and across the state. And Bobby did mention that he's in the delegation meetings that he's been to thus far, that there at least 3 times people have brought up funding APD or the med waiver. And he said that it's definitely on our list. So,
Good
Now
job,
it's over.
Mama.
Thank
That's
Oh my
the impact
gosh,
that you're
great
having by
job.
Thank you.
I'm
Holy
so
Moses.
fabulous.
excited that this is working. We
Yeah.
are at 3 o'clock, and I know there's a few hands up. I don't know if they're like existing hands or if anybody wants to add in anything real quick. And then we're
I
gonna
have
do
a quick question. With education, I just had an IEP meeting yesterday for my son, and basically because I think that I could avoid ever being in crisis if I could get him an education that meets the appropriate. I think he could be somewhat successful in life, at least maybe hold a job. However, right now, the only option I would have is to put him on access points and destroy his future, or basically just let him flounder and fail. So I didn't know, I haven't been in a lot of the meetings just because of our crazy schedule and my a million jobs, but are there any good points for education that everybody's been kind of pushing that I could just reiterate? Because I have a delegation meeting coming up next Friday.
Anna, find me after this
I have
meeting.
one point.
There's a few things there. What's your one point, Thomas?
One really quick point is that for a child 12 years or older, we should be doing transition planning, actively engaging in post-school outcomes and taking the 10 years of that time to make the connections, to get informed, to be engaged. So one of the things, Anna, I would say is convert from an IEP to a transition IEP so the outcomes beyond school are the focus.
And I think that's
Yeah,
what I was
and I
gonna
think
say too, is focus
right now
on
he's
making
9.
It's okay.
Good.
He's
So you're in
already
pre
9.
transition, but you can keep having
Yeah.
that conversation. And there are like our county right now has a program I want to talk to you about bringing to your county where it's parents helping other parents and working with the district. So they train
Yes.
us on best practices, and that way we can just keep that going forward. But if you're talking to your legislators about education, just tell your story, right?
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
your story,
And what
and you know some of the things they could do to improve, I'm sure, to get
Yeah.
him the access that he needs. So start developing that conversation. And I really loved what Berthy said. You attack the issue, not the person.
Yes.
That's hard and so important. Yeah.
Politics is my wheelhouse, so that's an area I'm very good at. It's just I want to keep consistent so that we can actually get something done. And if we're all saying different things, they're going to be overwhelmed and not pay attention.
Well, stick
Good.
with us. We'll help you.
Yeah, stick with us. And if you can't make it to the meeting, that's okay. We're all relatively available. At least some of us, like you'll find one of us. There's like 400 of us now, which is really
Yes.
exciting. And we definitely want people to connect locally. So with that, it is 3:04. So we are going to continue this. I'm going to paste it one more time before we get off. All the links to like what we do, the Facebook group, the filling out your form, and knowing where your delegation meetings are. And we're here every Friday. So next Friday, we're going to come on at 6 p.m. We alternate schedules just so everybody's got different lives. 6 p.m. next Friday night. And I'm so glad we did
And
this.
look for
Mhm.
the follow-up emails that come out. And when you get those, share those with other people, invite other people. I'm having exciting moments happen, like support coordinators informing their clients of these meetings. And I see one of my friends, Barb, on here from just that. And do you know what this is and why did I get this email from my support coordinator? I'm like, yeah, join up. So spread the word, engage your friends and families, know that there is tremendous power. And finally, Berthy, thank you from the bottom of my heart for
Oh my God.
sharing your
Yes.
love, your knowledge, and I look forward to your continued help. And you all have a wonderful Friday afternoon. We'll see you next week.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Ay,
Uh,
imagínate que creo que el año pasado